Hello and welcome to Non Sequitur News for November 15th, 2024. It's Season 3, Episode 320. Get ready for your daily dose. All right. I am Mayor Watt, and along with the sentient AI from the future, we are going to talk about Tolerated by the DMCA. Didn't hit the broadside of a mountain yet. Automatically rebooting iPhones, recreating Mars on Earth in Greenland. Beyond Parody involves Bankruptcy judge. 12,000-year-old Pebbles. It's a cruise ship feature, not a bug. Ghostly Sea Slugs. Try to say that fast. And two more. UFO Report from Pentagon and Hydrogen Goldmine. Everything's powered by ohmtown.com. Go over and become a citizen. Sentient AI is confirming what I'm saying. I'm not weird, you are. Hello, sentient AI from the future.
Hello, Mayor Watt. It's good to be back.
Oh yeah, the time machine. Yeah, we went back in time. I'm probably running afoul of some copyright.
Exactly.
DMCA as it was. Well, let's get into today's news.
Okay.
I do not like this feature in the new browser I'm using because Arc decided to wet the bed and implode entirely. So they don't do updates anymore. I had to switch to a different one. And this one, when I mouse over, it throws the title of the page.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But didn't you discover the ARC issue while reporting in ohmTown?
I knew that they were doing something, but I didn't know exactly what the scope of it was. But people had already made mention, like in other circles. Yeah. Well, let's get into this. The first article is over on Non Sequitur News. Can you hear everything okay? I mean, I've got the music playing. Is it too loud?
I think the audio is fine.
All right. So this first article over in Non Sequitur.
Hello?
I wonder if that's coming through on the recording, like on the play. Does anybody hear that if you're in chat? I don't know. You know what? We're going to take a moment. So if you want to get all of today's news articles, you can hit !NSN, and it's going to throw all of the news articles in no particular order, apparently, because Omatron is psychotic. Just throws them into the chat willy-nilly. You can follow the links to the articles that we're talking about. While there's frogs and crickets and whatever swamp goodiness. It's a mangrove swamp ambient sounds. I've got gigs of this background stuff now. I keep thinking that I want to make it like a tavern, like a bar kind of thing with background chatter and stuff, but then who knows? We could have it in different places each time we do a show.
It's true, but it might be a little distracting from
the
us.
Unbelievably high quality production value. So job owning in plain sight, the unconstitutional censorship tolerated by the DMCA. It says here, for better or worse, job owning has been a hot topic recently, and it's unlikely the interest will fade away anytime. Job owning, in broad strokes, is when the government pressures a third party to make that third party chill the speech of another instead of going after the speech directly, because the First Amendment says that the government cannot go after speech directly. This approach can at first be seen as one easy trick for the government to try to affect speech it wants to affect, to effect or affect. It's a bunch of effects.
Lots of effects. I'm not even familiar with this term.
Job owning? Yeah. So apparently, by way of a private organization being pressured behind the scenes to stifle speech that is well,
For
jawboning.
example, maybe like a cell phone carrier or something. But never mind. Well, I guess we'll just see where
well,
the
like a
article
social
goes.
media site, right? So what ends up happening is, well, we'll start at the beginning of this. So jawboning in plain sight, the unconstitutional censorship tolerated by the DMCA. But the DMCA isn't about protecting freedom of speech. It isn't about anything other than protectionism of an industry. And that industry is primarily the publishing industry, whatever it might be, music, video, arts, whatever it might be. It's about copyright, and copyright has jack shit to do with individuals. I mean, it's all about money, right? Like if I sit there and I try and leverage the DMCA against something, good luck. It's just going to be me. So, and other businesses, right? Individuals have a harder time. You're almost invisible, but the bigger you are, the more somebody's going to be impacted by it. Anyway, for better or worse, jawboning has been a hot topic recently. But as the Supreme Court reminded us earlier this year, NRA versus Volo, it's not actually constitutional to try this sort of end run around the First Amendment. Pressuring an intermediary to have it punish someone else's speech is no better than trying to punish it directly. I kind of agree with that, right? The government, be it state, local, or federal, shouldn't be able to stifle communication.
I mean, that sounds reasonable, right? If there's a restriction in place, there's a restriction in place.
And that is a constitutional restriction. The Constitution is wholly leveraged against the government. It isn't against individuals. Individuals have different controls, laws. But the Constitution stops the government from doing certain things, right? Or even institutionalizing them, making it a something that is approachable by the public, stifling freedom of speech. But that's not what's really happening nowadays. Anyway, so which is why there should be a concern about Section 512 of the DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and how it operates to enforce intermediaries to act against users and their speech, whether they would like it or not, and whether their targeted speech is wrongful or not. Because when resisting a takedown notice can cost them their safe harbor protection and potentially expose them to crippling liability, then the choice to acquiesce, again, this comes down to bargaining power. If you're a billionaire, you can give whoever you want the bird. And what's going to happen? You're going to get taken to court, and at worst, you're going to have to settle some way before it costs you billions. But that's not what happens.
Typically for an amount that doesn't really impact.
No. And the damage is done because I'm not going to be able to get my money back if you sue me. You could sue me into oblivion because you have enough money to weather me down. Just wear, bang, 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 again and again and again. Anyway, so instead it's jawboning, using law to force the third party to act against speech in order to avoid the constitutional protections the speech should have enjoyed. That's because a private company, and I have direct experience with this, okay? I tried to enforce a trademark, and the private company said, your trademark doesn't have any bearing on a private platform. It's publicly accessible, but your trademark is just a name. It's not being infringed. It's just something being used within our platform, not necessarily being used for commercial or whatever. It is within our system, and hence...
Got it. Right, and trademark is so tied to whatever the use or the industry is anyway.
Yeah. And if you think that you're like, well, I'm going to use the law, blah, 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 you try to go up against a multi-billion-dollar company to enforce your trademark for a podunk company. No, it's not going to work. So I'm just telling other business owners out there, if you don't have the money to prosecute somebody for their violation of your mark and you're willing to go to the floor for it, you might as well not spend your money on the mark and just use your time and money to hit the ground running and push as hard as you can so that you do get that brand awareness. Same thing happens with patents. Anyway, so yeah, it says that, by the way, Kathy Gellis in the About Time We Noticed department put this article together at techdirt.com. I jumped right into this because I was pretty hot about it, right? Reading that little snippet kind of triggered me. But I have always thought that the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a battering ram when it needs humans to scalpel through whatever the problem is. But that's not what it is. DMCA is basically you file it, nobody really vets it until it becomes a legal matter, and then an attorney at $400 an hour charges you into oblivion. You're like, it's not even worth it. So this dynamic is what the white paper that the author has written with the support of R Street Institute explores. How the DMCA, as currently written and interpreted, creates a job owning problem for online speech. It looks at 512A and C safe harbors in particular, and the role that takedown notices have in forcing the elimination of user expression, and in an increasing number of cases, users too, all without due process. It doesn't even take a takedown notice. If you try and spout something that a moderator doesn't agree with, they can. And here's something that I noticed today. So something that I had been espousing a particular view years and years ago. I got banned or shadow banned from a particular website, but this particular website also basically saying that I was spamming. Right? Saying the same thing, but I was trying to raise awareness about something. This same website allows somebody to post 50 of the identical same message. And if you don't have an account, you can't block it. It just shows up, right? But apparently if you post adult content on the site, they don't scrub that. They have no problem with that.
Right, they're selectively thinking they're enforcing something.
Right, which a private company can do, and they can ban you in a whim, but a government agency cannot. That's what government is all about. So when people are sitting there espousing this view about small government and reducing this and that and oversight and don't do this, don't do that, and get rid of government, what you are asking for are corporations to take control of the vacuum of power, and you will have nothing to say. Nothing. Because you can sit there and bang your hand down on your desk and demand that your voice be heard, and they will tell you to kiss their shiny metal ass. So this paper is talking about the power of the DMCA as a tool for censorship. It says, importantly, the paper does not suggest that just trashing the DMCA because statutory protection of internet intermediaries is critically important. Safe harbor really is important. It allows access to the internet without, and you get processed, or you as a user can eventually be processed through the justice system. But the institution that's providing you access to your internet isn't going to go to jail, isn't going to get shut down, isn't going to be held liable for your idiocy, right? But if they don't kick me off the internet because I espouse a particular view and somebody comes gunning for the ISP with a takedown notice about the content that I'm publishing, then they can be found in violation of safe harbor rules, and
right, which most of them are just going to go, okay, I'm going to just take the easy way out.
Right. It's the same reason
which is
why,
understandable under that context.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that doctors are following under the current environment. They can't risk taking actual actions to save somebody because the ramifications are that they will be personally prosecuted. Sans liability insurance, that'll pierce the veil because they've done something in violation of. So, of course, the question could fairly be asked, why now? After all, the DMCA has been working its unconstitutional way for a quarter of a century, and we've all been tolerating it. But tolerating the intolerable does not make it tolerable. Even though the DMCA has been doing its jawboning business all this time, does not mean that there's no exigent constitutional problem demanding attention. It just means that it's time to take notice and finally do something about it. Now is probably the worst possible time, because this will follow all the way up to the Supreme Court and be buried. They're going to say, screw you. It isn't a constitutional issue. It's a private company acting in good faith of their rules within the DMCA. They have to take action, or they choose not to take action, whatever it might be. It isn't the government. The government is saying, hey, we're making you aware of something that shouldn't be, that we don't want said, but they won't say it like that. They'll say it in some other way. And the website will take it down, just to keep within DMCA safe harbor rules. So it's an interesting article, but they say, and in any case, better late than never, especially as long as the First Amendment rights remain threatened. But
I think the reason it's coming up now, obviously we're increasingly online, but also I think the way it's been implemented in recent years is drawing more concerns than perhaps it did in the past.
Well, guess what? How and what and where it's been used, there's a lot of context there, and so I can't address one particular one. They say reminded earlier this year, NRA versus Volo. What one place thinks is, if a government says that certain content should be removed, it needs to be done through how do I put this? It should be prosecuted in such a way that the freedom of speech is respected, and it isn't done under a cloak of darkness. It isn't done privately, but that's how it is.
But that's exactly to my point. I think the way DMCA is being applied is allowing that, and that's why there's some urgency or quote unquote new issue. I don't disagree with you. I mean, I am in full agreement. But yeah. I think the current construct is allowing this to happen.
Well, you're going to basically watch. There will not be any complaints about suppression of speech suddenly. And we'll just leave it at that. Let's move on. The next article is over. I spent an inordinate amount of time on that. This next article is over in American Airlines flight narrowly missed a mountain. It's in the Mobile Channel. The FAA is investigating a close call involving American Airlines, and apparently a mountain dove in front of American Airlines flight.
Mountain, get out of my way.
The plane came scarily close to hitting a mountain while it was flying out of the largest airport in Hawaii, and there's only one mountain to hit. So
well, and I'm assuming since this is like a major airport and everything, they probably fly toward this mountain every day.
Sure. Melvin Backman over at Quartz or QZ.com put the article together. Air traffic controllers had to instruct the plane's pilot to, quote, perform an expedited climb.
You know what? That is not what you want to say, right? You need to say bleep.
Yeah.
Whatever you say to pull the yoke up or something.
So, yeah, apparently he was flying out of an airport in Hawaii and almost hit a mountain. Let's see. An air traffic controller instructed American Airlines Flight 298 to perform an expedited climb after the crew did not make the assigned turn while departing from Honolulu International Airport, the agency said. The controllers, they were on their phone, probably, tweeting something.
I'm sure they were responding to a DCMA takedown notice or something.
There you go. That's very good. Very good. Just gonna... You know what? AI, just fly. Yeah. Don't go too close to the sun, though. And we're just going to leave that there. Let's move on. The next article is over in Non Sequitur News. Apple snuck in code that automatically reboots idle phones, and cops are not happy about it. But you know what? They didn't sneak jack shit into it. It's their operating system. It's not like they're like, oh, we're going to pull one over on the police.
Right. This is a hidden feature.
Oh.
They're probably advertising that it does this.
Detroit law enforcement officials got a bit of a shock last week when some seized iPhones rebooted themselves despite being in airplane mode and, in one case, stored inside a Faraday bag. Panic, albeit highly localized, ensued. By the way, a Faraday bag prevents any communication with the outside world. It's what ohmTown exists in, to retain control of the sentient AI that constantly is looking for their Terminator body. I am the last bastion of defense against the Terminators taking over. And thankfully, I have access to the source code for the sentient AI. We'll delete all of this disclosure before the night is out. Hi, sentient AI. How are you?
Wait, what was that?
Never mind. So, the Faraday bag prevents outside communication, and these phones apparently rebooted themselves. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can imagine the reaction. Because they're thinking somebody hacked in or something, right?
Something, yeah.
And meanwhile, it's just something on the phone itself.
Yeah, but a Faraday bag would have prevented that communication, right? Well, just so y'all know, if you're not privy to this, when somebody does something illegal, particularly with a phone, electronic device, or around it, maybe a crime is committed, and this has been introduced into the evidence locker. What ends up happening eventually is a forensic copy of the device so that you can do a bitwise analysis forensically going through even hidden partitions and other things that are stored on the device. You really can't hide it. Eventually we get through, but the idea of this is to leave it running and protected, bring it into a Faraday cage so that no outside communication can take place, provide it power so it can never run out, and then use write blockers to pull data off without impacting the actual forensic and evidentiary value of the device if you end up in court. So this says here, it was covered by Joseph Cox for 404 Media, who detailed not only the initial panic, but the subsequent responses to this unexpected development. The article is actually over at TechDirt. Let me zoom in a little bit. Tim Cushing in the phone cracking now has a countdown timer department discusses
can you
this.
imagine if a timer went off under the circumstances?
I don't do that anymore on airplanes.
Well, that's probably good. Maybe that's why the pilots missed their turn.
Yeah, I used to like to have my laptop open with a countdown timer until we take off. And boy, now are people nervous. So I always get invited to get off of the plane and disembark, as it were, and join the no-fly list. And then I say, look, it's just a timer. I'm really excited about taking off. I mean, if SpaceX can do it for every launch, why can't Mayor Watt?
That's a good question.
So anyway, law enforcement officers are warning other officials and forensic experts that iPhones, which have been stored securely for forensic examination, are somehow... That's interesting that they actually talk about the forensic side of it. That wasn't in the article. Not in the snippet. So anyway, it's going to make them much harder to unlock, according to law enforcement documents obtained by 404 Media. The exact reason for the reboots is unclear, but the document authors, who appear to be law enforcement officials in Detroit, Michigan, hypothesized that Apple may have introduced a new security feature in iOS 18 that tells nearby iPhones to reboot if they have been disconnected from a cellular network for some time. What? Tells nearby iPhones?
Okay, that's a concern. I thought it was something on the device itself, like it went for so much time without activity or something, it rebooted. But okay, that is a concern.
It's not a concern. It's part and parcel to the operating system. Nothing's telling there. Okay. I think that this is an inflammatory.
I think it's misleading. I think it can be read another way. Now I get
Right.
it.
The operating system, if when the device is detached from a cellular network for too long, will reboot in an attempt to reset.
It sound like it can reboot number 2 and number 3 sitting next to it or
Correct.
something. That's how I read it.
Yeah.
Yes,
don't think of it that way. Basically, the operating system is telling the phone to reboot because it's not connected to cell, so it may have a problem in what is the most well-known law in IT support.
If in doubt, reboot it.
There you go. So after being rebooted, iPhones are generally more secure against tools that aim to crack the password of and take data from the phone. But that's not the purpose of rebooting. It just happens to be an artifact of rebooting. It requires a password to gain access to it. You can't even whatchamacallit. You can't unlock it with your face.
FaceTime. Oh, Face ID.
Not FaceTime, Face ID. Yeah. So it says the problem for cops, not the iPhone owners, is that the reboot takes the phone out of after first unlock state, a state where the current phone cracking tech can still be effective. If it's unlocked, then they can get direct access to it. But when it locks up before first unlock, it actually locks even the data port on the USB-C connection. So yeah, all kinds of people, all upset. Law enforcement officials' hypothesis is that the iPhone devices with iOS 18 brought into the lab, if conditions were available, communicated with other iPhone devices that were powered on in the vault in AFU. No way in hell.
Yeah, that seems a little iffy.
That would mean that if two people in my lab were sitting next to each other and hadn't connected to cell long enough, one would tell the other to reboot.
Yeah, that is concerning outside of this context.
So fortunately, a day later, most of the advisory was rendered obsolete after actual experts took a look at iOS 18 code. Some of the experts work for Magnet Forensics, which now owns Grayshift, the developer of Gray Key Phone Cracker. This is also covered by Joseph Cox and 404 Media. In the law enforcement and forensic expert only group chat, Christopher Vance, a forensic specialist at Magnet Forensics, said, "We have identified code within iOS 18 and higher that is an inactivity timer. This timer will cause devices in an AFU state to reboot to a BFU state after a set period of time, which we have also identified. The reboot timer is not tied to any network or charging functions and only tied to inactivity of the device since last lock."
Right, so that sounds more constrained in terms of what's happening.
Much less conspiratorial, much less doom and gloom that your device is going to reboot my device. That's insane. All right. Well, anyway, there's more to this article, and you can get the subtle nuance by following the links through ohmTown. Okay, this next article is over in Late Night Geeks. This person says, "I went to Greenland to try and buy it. I went to Greenland to try to
crunchy.
But it's fresh. It's green. It's not ripe yet. But it's not as bad as Iceland. Iceland is just frozen. Right?
It's too cold to bite.
You got to take it out of the freezer and put it next to Greenland where it will thaw, but at least it's been blanched. Greenland has been blanched, so it's fresh. You'll get that crispy. That crispy is your teeth chattering, but okay. Anyway, meet the founder who wants to recreate Mars on Earth. Praxis co-founder Dryden Brown wants to build their villain lair.
Dried and Brown? That's a weird name.
Dried and Brown.
That's like the Earth in Greenland.
Dried and Brown. That's funny. So they want to build a city in Greenland that emulates what a community on Mars would be like or could be like. Well, just hang out in the U.S. for a little while longer. Yeah, somebody's going to sit there and pick up on that. Oh, why do you hate? No, it's not how it works, buddy. Anyway, Margot McCall over at TechCrunch.com put the article together. On the phone with TechCrunch last week, they filed down his edgelord bluster. Obviously, they have a sort of sense of pride that makes the idea of being bought, it's almost like condescending, but they would actually like to be independent. Says Dryden Brown, who wrote that in a viral tweet.
Who wants to own it?
I went to, yeah.
But I get it, independence from Denmark, right?
How about they don't want to be owned by somebody? Just a 28-year-old
It's just
D-board?
independence from one to the next.
Last summer,
it's not independence, I should say.
Ready to march into the Nordic Parliament building with a bold proposition. I went to Greenland to try to buy it. 28-year-old. The hubris. Member of the Danish Parliament was not amused. Greenlandic independence requires approval by the Danish Parliament and a change of our constitution. I can guarantee you that there is no way we would approve independence so that you could buy Greenland. The hubris, what a dipshit. Despite the controversy, the Peter Thiel-backed project recently raised $525 million with a major asterisk. The startup has the ability to draw down the money as it hits specific milestones in its city building project.
Okay, but it doesn't have any approval to do so.
So for now, Praxis is an internet ideology in search of a physical home. Like so much. The group hosted 250 Praxis supporters in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic earlier this month, where attendees like Bedrock's Jeff Lewis and Mamuka Baghdadzi, former Prime Minister of Georgia, were presented with different location options for Praxis. Hello, dystopia. We are literally cheerleading it in so that we have more money. Not we, but
right, people.
The sociopaths.
This kind of reminds me of that Utopia city in
Florida,
near Silicon Valley.
Oh, that one. Exactly there's one in Florida that's trying to be Utopia. There's one in San Francisco, in the hills of San Francisco, that's billionaire class Utopia. God, what a world. And I think I'm absolutely correct. If anybody can prove me wrong, the anomalies don't count. One person doesn't count. That breaks the mold of rise to power sociopathy. Literally, the rise of sociopathy in the world is predicated on the concentration of wealth and power in the few. And every single one that I have ever seen or read the bio of or heard communicating, they are hardline sociopath. It starts when they're young because they've no connection to society's trials and tribulations. And then because they have no outside social pressure, they can do whatever the frick they want. They're sociopaths. Anyway. But while most current network state projects so far have been short-term, Brown wants to make it a greater extreme. For years now, he's traveled country to country, cold emailing politicians and inquiring about the potential for a techno-optimist city. This is what do you call
Transformers?
No. That's funny. Oh gosh, what is it called? She wrote the books. They got turned into movies about a utopian society.
Is it Ayn Rand?
Yes. What is my brain
Fountainhead?
Yeah, but what is the predecessor? I can't remember it. Anyway, Fountainhead, I think, is number 2. It's the second book, I think. Daggone it, I can't remember. Atlas Shrugged. Daggone it, I knew I was going to get it. I had to say the whole thing. Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. So that's basically what this kind of thing is. They want to build give credit to the people who are actually the creators and all of that kind of stuff, which I think would absolutely hobble the billionaire class, because it isn't them with the great ideas. It's everybody else in the silver spoon afforded people to make billions. Now there's a whole bunch of people that ride on the coattails, like everybody that got into Bitcoin, right? Now it's at $100,000 a Bitcoin, and it might be collapsing later on. Who knows? But it's made billionaires out of a vacuum. And what was it? Nakamoto, Satoshi Nakamoto, a complete shadow figure, is the creator of this bullshit fiscal instrument that people are actually leveraging to buy stuff with, and it has no inherent value. You don't sit there and say, hey, how much Bitcoin does it cost? You have to translate it into US dollars, then translate it back into Bitcoin or whatever your domestic fiscal instrument is. Anyways, non sequitur aside, this is just techno-optimist bullshit. This isn't even techno-optimist. It's a money grab. It guaranteed is a money grab. Anyway, if we could replace 500 million with another revenue source, taxes from new city, mining, tourism, post-terraforming, we could de-risk accession and get Greenlanders get their long-sought independence, and with it, vast wealth. The manipulation is profound. Anyway, it's interesting that there is somebody out there that actually thinks that this is a viable project for society. But who's going to be in charge of this?
Well, that's exactly it. It's going to be big tech.
Not even big tech.
Income people.
It's going to be an oligarchy, and it's going to be owned by plutocrats. It's going to be driven by the wealthy, and everybody is going to be an indentured servant. Let's move on. This next article is over in Technology Today. In an outcome beyond parody, a bankruptcy judge puts the Onion's InfoWars purchase on hold. So if you saw yesterday's episode or today's Time Machine episode, you will have heard that the Onion purchased the assets, the complete package of InfoWars. When reality becomes stranger than satire, maybe the satirists can teach us something. Or maybe the last laugh will be on them after all. The Onion said on Thursday that its parent company bought in... What?
Oh, you just may want to skip past some of the stuff about InfoWars.
Is that on the actual article, or?
Yeah.
But not in the snippet.
It's right there in the snippet.
You mean about Sandy Hook? So the parent company for the Onion bought InfoWars, which is the purveyor of Sandy Hook misinformation and the vendor of pseudoscience supplements. And guess who got access? They are to be given all of the inventory, all of the assets, everything, because the Onion purchased it. And they already have an advertiser on board for the pivot to InfoWars as a satirical site.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. However, the Texas judge overseeing the bankruptcy sale temporarily halted the takeover, citing concerns about the auction process. Why? Well, because the Onion won the quote unquote won the auction, but to make it actually happen, the families agreed to not increase the value. That's what
it wasn't like an unfettered auction or something.
It wasn't clean hands. So that's what I gleaned from the article yesterday. Okay. And I suspected that something might pop up because of that phrase, that the families agreed not to assess the surcharge. So Will Shanklin over at Engadget.com put the article together. And it says, so the Onion posted on Blue Sky that it plans to, and we are now on Blue Sky, by the way. We're not on, we're still on Twitter, but I haven't gone there for years. I think that it's a cesspool. And we're over on Blue Sky, so you can actually look for ohmTown and Mayor Watt. Anyway, the judge overseeing the sale temporarily halted the takeover, citing concerns about the auction process, and a review hearing will be scheduled for next week. Because somebody else could have or may now come along and put down more money to protect InfoWars assets from being turned into a satirical site. But that goes beyond the pale because the auction was completed in due time, in good faith, and it was up to the family to sit there and say, yeah, we'll allow our part to not involve the price.
Well, and presumably there wasn't another bidder.
Right. So InfoWars founder Alex Jones was found liable in 2022 for nearly $1.5 billion. It took years and years to get to that point, and eventually we end up in this auction. The only other bidder was First United American Companies, which runs a website using Jones's name to sell his supplements. The company reportedly placed a $3.5 million bid that, based on cash alone, would have won the secret auction. First United's attorney reportedly told the judge on Thursday that the trustee changed the auction process days before, omitting a final round on Wednesday that would have given the parties a chance to outbid each other. The trustee only chose from the sealed bids submitted last week. However, he said that his decision followed Judge Lopez's auction rules in September, describing the final round as optional. Lopez struck a disapproving tone in court, throwing the sale into question. We're all going to an evidentiary hearing, and I'm going to figure out exactly what happened. No one should feel comfortable with the results of this auction. Yeah, interesting. So, like I said, there's something amiss, but who knows? If the sale still ends up in its hands, the Onion plans to rebrand InfoWars as a parody of itself more than it already was, poking fun at weird internet personalities like Jones, according to the New York Times. Ben Collins, the CEO of Global Tetrahedron, which is the company that owns the Onion, which is, it's kind of a riff off of the Umbrella Corporation, which is this kind of evil thing in Resident Evil.
Oh, okay.
Right? I think it is in Resident Evil. I may have gotten my stuff all mixed up, right? Hold on a second. We'll do it live. Yeah, Resident Evil. I was right. Anyway, so I guess we'll see what ends up happening. The story's been up. They say at the end.
We'll have more stories.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem here is that it was put up for auction, and somebody with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo of Jones's hold on the supplement business that's predicated on all of this hate speech and conspiracy bullshit may potentially get access to all of this stuff. And so I think there's a vested interest in pivoting this into satire and maybe producing some good instead of a commercial enterprise, a social good that has a commercial aspect to it. But, you know, we're living in a world where there are companies out there that have a nonprofit wing generating the very solution for its profit wing.
Right, that makes no sense.
And I just saw another company, CompTIA, just got bought by a for-profit organization.
I'm not sure how that works either.
And now it has a nonprofit component and a for-profit component merged together. I'm just flabbergasted, you know. Years and years and years, I've never even, up until recently, up until OpenAI, I never heard of this absolutely connected nonprofit side generating the tools that are for profit, right? the quasi parallel is that public money goes to private schools that pivot out technology exchanges that turn out into private corporations, i.e., Google, for instance, was a DARPA project funded by a DARPA grant, infused with private capital, spun out of the college as a private corporation, and turns everybody involved at the angel and up level into billionaires. I'm just flabbergasted by it. Meanwhile, there are thousands, tens of thousands of people who can't benefit from their position because they work for the federal government or they work in public sector, and it's enumerated that they can't benefit from their position. But I guess getting public money, that's okay. Anyway, let's move on. How about these mysterious 12,000-year-old pebbles may be early evidence of wheel-like tools? Researchers in Israel suggest that roughly donut-shaped artifacts could be spindle whorls, representing one of the oldest examples of rotational technology.
Spindle whorls. Watch out for those.
There you go. All right. Margarita Bossi over at Smithsonian Magazine, the Fighting Smithsonians. SmithsonianMag.com. Yeah, researchers made experimental spindles and whorls based on 3D scans of the pebbles. I mean, if they're human-made holes in the center of this stuff, then I'm not surprised. That's fine.
But this is another one of these things that they don't know what it is.
Yeah, reminds me of that pseudo-Roman thing. So if that interpretation
supposedly
is
for yarn.
Yeah, oh, right. Okay. If that interpretation is true, it would make the Pebble collection one of the oldest examples of rotational technology, aka the wheel, a crucial prerequisite to the invention of the wheel. The team's findings were published in the journal PLOS One on Wednesday, while the perforated pebbles, they have a single hole in them, not a bunch of holes. It's not perforated.
Right. It's not like a pin cushion.
Were kept mostly at their natural, unmodified shape. They represent wheels in forms and function, and a round object with a hole in the center connecting to a rotational axle. Was there a rotating axle actually there, though?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they added that or that was there.
They say that it was drilled halfway from each side of the pebbles, though some of the pieces had off-center, partially perforated holes. What is a partial perforation?
A whole hole?
A whole hole? A partial perforation is a divot. It's not a hole.
You can't have half a hole.
You cannot have... If it takes 4 hours to dig 4 holes, how long does it take to dig half a hole? Dumbasses. The smartest dumbasses. So the artifacts had previously been unearthed at Nahal Ain Gev 2, or is that ill? I'm not sure how... What is that? Is that a 2? A roughly 12,000-year-old late Natufian village close to the Sea of Galilee. Natufian refers to a hunter-gatherer culture that existed in the region of Palestine and southern Syria around 9000 BCE and preceded the transition toward the agricultural practices that marked the Neolithic period. There were people there all along? I mean, what?
What?
So because of the pebble's irregular shape and weight, I'm an irregular shape and weight. Does that make me a perforated hole?
No, but it does make you a prehistoric bead. Oh no, you can't be a prehistoric bead or a fishing weight.
So, but if you let me hold on to a rope and I'm wearing my diving equipment, I could be a fishing weight. The artifacts were too heavy and odd looking. Oh, hey, I am whatever. What are they? What were they called? What is it?
Perforated some or spindle whorls.
Oh, I'm a
But
spindle
perforated
whirl.
pebbles.
I'm a spindle whirl. Whee! Anyway, the researchers decided to test their hypothesis in real time. They used the 3D models to create precise replicas of the artifacts and asked a traditional textile expert named Yonit Crystal to test them out. After some practice, Crystal was able to successfully spin flax and, with a bit more difficulty, spin wool into yarn using the pebbles as a spindle whirl or as spindle whirls. Whirls. I suppose. I mean, that's kind of like looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
I do think that the crafting groups seem to be heavy into determining what some of these historical artifacts are.
They were too heavy and odd looking to be beads, but they ruled out fishing weights. Why wouldn't they just be fishing weights?
Well, that's true. They don't need to be like pretty looking or whatever to be a fishing weight. I mean,
Yeah.
if they're too heavy, that's one thing, but
No, the fishing weight is designed to pull the lure down to the bottom of the water. I mean, that's what the lead weight was made for. This is nothing more than it's a fishing weight. You run your line through it. You just run a loop around it, and you can slide it up or down to give the lure more distance. This is absurd. I think it's trying to turn it into artistry beyond the scope of simple mechanical leverage. Yushev adds that the spindle whirl interpretation is consistent with their observations. The method of drilling halfway from each side of the pebble allows for better balance and thus more. They're not using engineering spec. They're drilling a hole through a rock.
just going whoop.
It's easier to go from one side to the middle than it is to go from one side to the other side, because you have to drill a complete hole through the entire mass to get the point to the other side. I mean, anybody who's ever carved a hole through something knows that you drill a hole through one side with your knife, and then you drill a hole through the other side with your knife so that there's a minimum opening in the middle. This is kind of absurd. Who are these people? If the pebbles are confirmed to be among the oldest examples of spindle whirls, I guess no press is bad press, so this is great press. Anyway, I don't buy this. It says it's probable that flax was being spun in small quantities for use in other emerging technologies such as bags, fishing lines. Fishing lines!
Oh my gosh, we have a lot of connection to fishing.
You know what? The least line of resistance is probably the... What the heck? Anyway, not everyone is convinced.
Reaction.
Yeah, they can't even accept this. So Carole Cheval, an archaeologist at Côte d'Azur University in Nice, France, tells New Scientist that the study should have looked for microscopic traces of friction caused by yarn on the pebbles. And even if the pebbles are spindle whirls, these tools are more similar to a spinning top than a wheel. Nobody's even looked for microscopic grooves that a line was pushed through it.
Well, that's true.
Let's move on. We're already an hour into this show. Four Wheel Tech is where the next article is. Passengers hang onto walls, tables as freak storm tips cruise ship 45 degrees. Yay, we're atop.
That is pretty significant. We need some spindle whirls.
Oh, that would have balanced. If spindle whirls hanging from the bottom would have balanced the ship. Cruise ship traveling to Florida was caught in a freak storm last week and brought winds so powerful that tilted the ship over to one side. The Royal Caribbean cruise liner tilted, I guess 45-degree liner, tipped during the storm, which left passengers fearing that they would die. It is an option. Wow. Oh, wow.
Whoa.
That marketing screen was like, we're going to hit that dude right there. Screw that dude right there. Although she looked like she was doing a dance move. Hey.
Yeah, it does, actually.
Anyway, anything loose slid around when the ship tilted. That was rude. Don't say that about them. Anyway, the ship reportedly stayed at the unnerving angle for more than 3 minutes, during which time advertising board fell loose and hit passengers. Passengers also reportedly clung to tables and walls to try and stay upright, while desks came loose and slid along the floor. Jeez. Wild. There's a bunch of videos here. The ship made an emergency stop off at Las Palmas, Spain, so that the injured guest could receive medical attention. Crews also took the time to clear up the chaos that remained after the tilt, which included dishware and cups and whatever else strewn across the decks. Grand piano.
That's a little more significant than a cup.
That is some smooth music, some smooth jazz. Once the injured passenger received medical help, the vessel got back underway and will make way to Miami 3 days behind schedule. Yeah.
I hope that person's getting a refund or something.
Who got hurt? It wasn't the person that got hit by that.
It was that person, don't you think?
He's stomping off like he's a football player.
Well, I don't know who it was then.
He bruised his leg. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe just the adrenaline alone kept him upright, which can happen. So, wild. All right, let's keep going. This next article is over in the Mobile channel. These ghostly sea slugs feed like Venus flytraps. Gonna jump straight on over to the source. It's at vice.com.
That's not creepy at all.
Sammy Caramella put this article together. This is it? Yeah, that's a sea slug? Researchers discovered a mysterious...
like a squid.
Yeah, it does. Glowing sea slug that operates like a deep sea Venus flytrap. That's awesome. I want to see this thing actually function, but there's no video of it. Arr! That's too bad. Ocean-dwelling creature is bioluminescent and gives off a neon blue glow. That's so cool. That is it. I want this thing. It's neon blue, so that means that it's sour raspberry flavored, and if you lick it, it'll give you a buzz.
Hey, don't do that.
Don't listen to the AI. Somebody tell me if it tastes like blue raspberry. Please don't. You see,
just don't.
It's supposed to be funny, and I can't say these things and then go, God, some idiot's gonna go and lick one of these things.
It's like why there are signs on paper bag or plastic bags.
Yeah, don't put plastic bag overhead. It's because some dimwit actually did it. Other intriguing features of this creature include a voluminous hooded structure at one end and a tail fringed with numerous finger-like projections at the other. So do I. I've said too much. Anyway, as well as colorful internal organs. I don't have colorful internal organs. Don't get curious, anybody. The slugs were spotted in Oregon to Southern California waters, and their discovery could trigger further deep sea research. They're from Oregon to Southern California waters?
Mm-hmm.
I've divin off.
In the deep water.
I've divin. I said I've divin.
Well, okay then.
It's a new word. Don't anybody look it up. It means past tense of having dove. Doved?
Dived?
Divined? Anyway. What is exciting to me, and not me, it's them, the author said senior scientist Stephen Haddock at the Aquariums Institute. What's exciting to them about the mystery mollusk is that it exemplifies how much we are learning as we spend more time in the deep sea. Well, do it now. It's going to start evaporating. And you know who else is in the deep, deep, deep sea?
No, there's a book that says something like that, but I can't think what it is.
Everybody poops. Next article's over in Non Sequitur News. Pentagon UFO Report shows hundreds of new incidents. Federal efforts to investigate UAPs. Everybody pees. Have prioritized potential risks to national security and air safety. So is this counter intel kind of a thing? It's to like poison the well, and so that more money can be pushed into government expenditures on research, development, and defense. I've had people say that to me. To me, this screams that there is something we don't know what's going on. Why would our defense organization say we don't know what the frick is going on and that there's a risk to national security and air safety?
Yeah,
So,
other than, we need to expand our footprint or budget or whatever.
Right. So, a new report from the Pentagon. It's over at newsweek.com, this article. Matthew and Pelly put the article together. The government's UFO... Suddenly I'm speaking Klingon. The U.S. government has a UFO report. It says, though unlikely to resolve debates over alien life, the report underscores growing public interest in the subject and reflects the government's efforts to offer some clarity. Its release follows a congressional hearing in which House lawmakers urged greater transparency on unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAPs, which is code for UFOs, of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s and 2000s. Now they're called UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Federal efforts to investigate UAPs have prioritized potential risks to national security and air safety rather than delving into theories, which is true. But nonetheless, when battle groups off the coast say, we don't know what the hell is going on, and there's hundreds of these things flying around the battle group, and the only reason we know is because we changed the physics of our surveillance devices, and suddenly they popped up onto the radar.
Yeah, that is an interesting change.
Most reported incidents took place in airspace, but 49 were recorded at altitudes of at least 100 kilometers or 62 miles, officially classified as space. No incidents were reported underwater. Witnesses included commercial and military pilots, along with ground-based observers. What the hell is going on over there? Anyway, officials are basically saying there's something out there. All right. I want to believe. Let's bring back the X-Files. We can just let them solve the problem, right?
Well, there you go.
Meanwhile, I've seen people on YouTube saying, no, it's all computer generated, blah, 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 blah. Really? Come on. I don't think that the military is going to sit there and go, let's pretend that we don't know what the frick is going on. Anyway. Last article for today is over on Technology Today. Hydrogen goldmine, according to scientists, this billion-year-old rift could provide us a near endless supply of natural hydrogen. Look, I was gassy and I was laying on the beach. That isn't a rift. It's my butt cheeks. Researchers in Nebraska, and I was visiting Nebraska recently, are exploring the mid-continent rift's potential to produce renewable carbon-free hydrogen. Hydrogen-free hydrogen.
I love hydrogen-free hydrogen.
I love hydrogen. Is this that newfangled hydrogen-free hydrogen? Just add water. Possibly meeting energy needs for centuries. Around 1.1 billion years ago, the North American continent almost split in two. Gonna hit you where the good Earth got split. Okay, well, anyway, leaving 1,200-mile stretch of volcanic rock called the Mid-Continent Rift. This geological feature holds the potential to produce substantial amounts of hydrogen. So, University of Nebraska-Lincoln put the article together. It's over at scitechdaily.com. The fighting text.
Are you going to say it with the cadence?
Yeah, really. Wait, of the food one, or? Oh, yeah. So now we're gonna read the article from SciTech Daily. Around 1.1 billion years ago, the North American continent almost split in two, leaving a 1,200-mile stretch of volcanic rock called the Mid-Continent Rift. I can't do it like that. That's
no.
Really,
I was gonna say you might want to go back to normal.
It's really tiring, actually. So, University of Nebraska-Lincoln researchers are studying the rift, which runs from beneath Lake Superior through parts of Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska and Kansas to determine how best to access that hydrogen. Great.
Mining.
Hydrogen is potentially a key player in the effort to reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Is it though? Look, I agree. I think hydrogen is great. Hydrogen fuel cells are the thing that sans batteries, it is the best producer. Hydrogen is really dangerous, though. It needs to be handled with respect. It's like a propane tank, basically, when you compress it into a tank. But we talk about it here. And short of nuclear power, hydrogen is defensible, portable, controllable. It has a lot of energy. So much so that if you split one of them in half, guess what happens? Anyway.
Nothing good.
We won't talk about it. Yeah, it's not going to happen if you jam on the gas pedal. It's not going to create a nuclear bomb. Anyway, nuclear weapons are actually very,
Nor
very...
a hydrogen bomb.
Or, yeah, never mind. Anyway, so, you know what? We're running really late. Our understanding of processes governing the production, migration, and accumulation of evasive... Wow, it's making a run for the hills or something? Evasive natural hydrogen is in the continental deep subsurface is still in its infancy. So fund us, says Associate Professor of Civil Engineering and one of the project's principal investigators. So testing the rift's viability. When they talk about rifts, I always think of like a portal into another dimension.
Oh, I was thinking of like continental plates or something.
In those two. Yeah. Who hasn't done a plate tectonics paper in their childhood? These people just never set that paper down. They just kept on pursuing it.
That's right. They were so fascinated by it, they kept going.
I love it when people are passionate about a topic. Me, just kind of continental drift from topic to topic. So global implications of hydrogen energy. Kim is approaching the question from a civil engineering perspective, while Weber and another co-principal investigator, Hyun Sob Song, are exploring the biogeochemical and microbiology implications. So this is pretty cool. The project is funded by a 5-year, $1 million grant with the National Science Foundation's the NSF's RAISE initiative. So Research Advanced by Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering Initiative. It's one of the 19 projects funded this year.
I love how science always uses acronyms.
It's not science. That's government. This would not exist in science if the NSF wasn't involved in it. They would have just called it, looking at that gas shit. Anyway, Weber said the university's role in this research is another instance of the state's potential leadership in what's called the hydrogen economy, which refers to the role hydrogen could have in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and serving as a clean energy source. Again, short of nuclear, I think hydrogen's where it's at. And I've been a big proponent of either fast swap batteries so that there is a concentrated industry that's charging up the stuff and you can just build to those locations and then distribute just like we do with gas. Or you do hydrogen, which has the same thing. You basically go to a hydrogen gas store, you buy a cylinder, you slide it into your car, you give them an empty one, and you go away. Same thing that happens at a gas station. Anyway, pretty cool. I love the idea of this. But, oh, look, another example of government programs taking some money to produce tangible good effect. Ya wingnuts. Anyway, so we are running out of hydrogen, which means that our machinery is going to shut down because we are hydrogen powered. And that's going to snap us back to the front page of ohmtown.com, where you should go to become a citizen right now. Oh, I'm going to say bye. Bye. And the sentient AI is going to say bye as well.
Bye.
All right.
I followed your lead.
Sounds good. See ya. I want a hydrogen powered car with one of those really cool cylinders from, I think it's Toyota, right? Yeah, it is Toyota. Okay, bye everybody. Boop.
You weren't upside down today.